How do you find those assemblies that should be in your program but aren't registered yet?
Start by knowing which connections pose a hazard and requiring that a customer service inspection or a CSI is done.
If you were speaking to a utility and they had best of intentions and they really wanted to improve their process in the next couple of years, what are the first 2 or 3 steps that you would recommend?
Number 1, make a list of all commercial facilities in their distribution system. Step 2, take those lists and then rank them based on estimated level of hazard.
What are the biggest blind spots utilities have when it comes to discovering backflow assemblies and maintaining accurate records?
Good coordination and communication between the various groups and departments is essential.
Hi, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Travis Cavall, Field Operations Supervisor for Hardin & Associates Consulting and Partnership Development Lead for FLO by HAC. Where we help utilities strengthen cross-connection control and compliance programs. In our introductory episode, we introduced the 6 pillars of cross-connection control, the framework we'll be using through the first season to explore what makes a successful and sustainable program. In episode 1, we discussed the first pillar, legal foundation, and why having the proper authority through ordinances, policies, and code alignment is essential to protecting public health. Today, we're moving to pillar 2, discovery. In today's episode, we're discussing the second pillar of cross-connection control, discovery. One of the biggest challenges utilities face is identifying assemblies that should be in their program, but aren't currently being tracked. How do those gaps happen, and what can utilities do to improve visibility? Joining me today is Joel Klumpp, a respected cross-connection control professional with extensive experience helping utilities strengthen and improve their programs. Joel, thanks for being here. To get us started, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in cross-connection control.
Sure, happy to be here. My background is from the regulatory side. I worked at the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, or TCEQ, for over 22 years, and most of that time was spent in the Water Supply Division. Back in 2007, I was the lead staff person providing technical assistance on backflow prevention and cross-connection control to public water systems and utilities. I knew that job was bigger than one person, and I had heard about a group of experts that used to meet with TCEQ on a regular basis, but no longer did. I received approval to recreate the work group, and the cross-connection control subcommittee was back up and running and has been meeting quarterly ever since. I learned so much from the various industry experts who participated in this work group. I'm very thankful to them. So as far as helping utilities strengthen their programs, participation in that work group is a great resource. Of course, reaching out to experts in the field, whether at a firm like Hardin & Associates or the staff at TCEQ, is also a great approach.
Yeah, that one person is definitely, that's what most of us get, right, in our water utilities. And some of those folks aren't even really learned in cross-connection control before they start those jobs, right? So mentorship is huge in that cross-connection control subcommittee. You certainly learn quite a bit from. I know I have over the years just listening in. So when I was running my program, one of my biggest challenges was just trying to figure out what was already out there, right? What assemblies did we have in the field? What cross-connections were we dealing with? What were our hazards? How do you find those assemblies that should be in your program but aren't registered yet?
That is a great question. And the types of facilities that need backflow protection will vary widely based on the type of utility. Obviously, a utility that is exclusively residential will have different hazards from a municipality that has a variety of customers, including residential and commercial connections. When I worked at the TCEQ and would meet with utility representatives to evaluate the effectiveness of their cross-connection control program, I would always start by doing a spot check of 10 businesses within their service area. I would use a TCEQ resource. There is a table named Assessment of Hazard and Selection of Assemblies, and that is found in the Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 290, Section 29047F.
Mm-hmm.
This table lists many commercial businesses where water-using equipment may be found, such as commercial car washes, medical clinics, and chemical plants. One important caveat about this table is that it is not an all-inclusive list of hazards that a utility should look for. So it's important to note that if you are part of your utility's cross-connection control program and you're using that table as a tool, not everything may be included in that table. So using that table and then online yellow pages, I would pull 10 specific businesses from the service area of a utility, and I would send that to the program administrator in advance of meeting with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's where a good record keeping system is essential. Once the utility administrator got that list from me, they should be able to look at their records and determine, number one, if no hazard is present, and that would be through documentation in a customer service inspection. So more on that in a minute. Or two, if a backflow prevention assembly is installed there and has been tested as required. Some program administrators were prepared for my visit and had all their records ready, but many were not. So back to your main question, how do you find facilities that should be tracked but aren't? So you start by knowing which connections pose a hazard and requiring that a customer service inspection or a CSI is done. And then the result of that CSI will guide the program administrator when they decide what type of backflow protection, if any, is required. Another note about that table I was talking about, just because a business type is listed in that table doesn't mean a backflow prevention assembly is automatically required. It is the result of the CSI that determines that. So for example, dentists' offices are included in that table, but if a CSI is done at a particular dental office and the CSI documents that there is no use of potable water at that office that constitutes a hazard, then even though dentist offices are in that table, the program administrator should follow the results of the CSI and not require backflow protection there. So, Travis, you mentioned that you ran a system, and I don't know how familiar you were with that system before you started running the program. Obviously, when somebody is hired from a community that they're familiar with and they know the businesses that are there, that's a great head start. But sometimes people move around, and a program administrator might not have much knowledge about a system when they first start.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So I was local to the system I was hired at, but there was no previous cross connection control program before we started. So we did have
starting from scratch.
Yeah, we started from scratch. I literally got handed 5 backflow test reports, test and maintenance reports. So we started from scratch, but it was an exciting time. And that 290-47F table that you were talking about was a great help for us. We literally had it thumbtacked to the wall as part of our kind of fact finding when we went out to find where our assemblies were and where our hazards were in town.
One more thing before we move on. I also want to say that for a municipality, close coordination with the building inspection department is also really important. So representatives from the building inspection department can alert the cross-connection control program administrator that a new business is going in or that a material improvement or addition has been made to an existing connection. So in those cases, the program administrator would send notice to the business that a CSI is required and then can follow up on requiring backflow protection based on the results of that CSI.
Yeah. And then in your experience, are there any type of facilities that maybe assemblies disappear from or new assemblies are added from more often than other facilities?
In my experience, I wouldn't say that there is a particular type of facility that gets missed. I would say more generally that whether or not the necessary facilities are part of a water system's records is based on their record keeping system. Are they managing their CSI certificates as they're supposed to? Are they managing their backflow prevention assembly test and maintenance forms as they're supposed to? Back to when I would send those 10 businesses to a utility in advance of meeting with them, I was always surprised when I would show up and they wouldn't have any records at all.
Yeah.
So my experience was more a direct link between a particular utility's record maintenance system and whether they were able to keep up with the facilities or not.
Yeah, definitely. I know some of the challenges that we had as a program that we were trying really hard, right, was when we have facilities maybe that had maintenance men that weren't pulling records or not pulling records, pulling permits for work they were doing. Sometimes, even with that coordination with building inspections, which is a difficult thing to maintain on its own, we would have a hard time just because there's not a paper record of the work that's done, right? So it requires periodic CSIs or some sort of inspection in order to figure out that that change has been made. Or the next year when a backflow test isn't turned in or a new backflow test is turned in.
And
So
can I jump in real
yeah,
fast and say that that's a great opportunity for the utility to be doing customer education,
yeah,
whether that's the customer being residential connections or commercial connections. You mentioned at the top of the podcast that sometimes people don't receive the training or the mentoring that they need. I think in some cases where those maintenance people are making changes to the internal plumbing and water using equipment at facilities, they don't realize the risk that they are putting on the other people at that business and the water system as a whole. And so hopefully, if a utility has a really strong cross connection control program, one
mhm,
component of that is good customer education so that people understand the importance of backflow protection and cross connection control and how that directly ties to protection of public health.
yeah, definitely. So, what are the biggest blind spots utilities have when it comes to discovering backflow assemblies and maintaining accurate records?
In my experience, I would say that the biggest blind spot that I saw for utility being able to discover hazards is when there's the lack of coordination between the program administrator and other officials involved in cross connection control. So I already mentioned coordination between a program administrator and building inspection department. When I would meet with program administrators, sometimes it would just be me and the administrator in the room.
Hmm.
But in other cases, there would be like 12 people on the other side of the table from me. It'd be the program administrators, the building official, the fire marshal, maybe a licensed irrigator, person taking calls at the front desks, and so on. So, good coordination and communication between the various groups and departments is essential. Program administrators shouldn't feel like they have to do everything themselves. When other departments are notifying the administrator of new businesses and changes to existing businesses, then the administrator can stay on top of requiring CSIs as needed. And then regarding maintaining accurate records, in my experience, only the smallest utilities could do that well with a spreadsheet they built themselves.
Yeah.
Since their software specifically geared towards managing a cross connection control program, that those utilities that use that type of software were the ones that I saw who were most successful.
Yeah. And so when you see those record keeping gaps, right? When you go in and you see those record keeping gaps, I know you talked towards the software. Did you think that was the biggest piece of it, or were there some staffing issues or like process issues that caused most of those problems?
In my experience, every utility was a little bit different from another. And of course, the types of hazards that are present would greatly determine the challenges that that
Mhm.
particular program administrator faced. So I think there could be issues with staffing, whether it's somebody who hasn't received the necessary training, or a program administrator that's pulled in 1,000 different directions. They might not have processes in place. They may not have a system set up to send out reminders to those customers that have a backflow prevention assembly installed to protect against a health hazard and therefore need an annual inspection. Or it might be just poor record maintenance. I know that Hardin Associates is developing software for cross-connection control program administrators. Can you tell me more about the tool that Hardin Associates is creating?
Yeah, it's called FLO. We're really excited about it, and it really is designed as a record-keeping software. But more than a record-keeping software, it's a relationship with Hardin and Associates that'll take you all the way from your ordinance through your record-keeping, your annual notices, and customer service inspections, all that in one place, and really will guide you all the way through. When your program administrator has to potentially do enforcement, right? It doesn't ever really let you drop the ball, which is what I noticed running a program. There was always different places in softwares where there wasn't a prompt to not drop the ball, right? So you had to constantly stay on top. And like you said, program administrators can be pulled in 1,000 different directions. And so we really want to, where we can, aid those program administrators in running the most solid program that they can. And so that's the goal with FLO. We're really excited about it, and we're really excited for people to get to see it. If you were speaking to a utility and they had best of intentions and they really wanted to improve their process, their discovery process in the next couple of years, right? They wanted to make a big investment in their discovery. How do we find all these assemblies that we don't have records of? What are the first 2 or 3 steps that you would recommend to them?
Sure. And you mentioned that you got to start a program from scratch. I've certainly spoken with utilities that were in the same place. So and let me start by saying, even though these rules and requirements from TCEQ have been required for years, a utility should never hesitate to acknowledge that they need to improve their program or maybe build a new program and take the steps to get it up and running. So that said, really the first 3 steps I would recommend to a water system or a utility. Number 1, make a list of all commercial facilities in their distribution system. Also make a list of residential connections with irrigation systems or auxiliary water supplies. Step 2, take those lists and then rank them based on estimated level of hazard. For example, a chemical plant would have a higher priority than a commercial laundry, or a home with a rainwater harvesting system would have a higher priority than a home with a standard irrigation system. And then step 3, review what records you have. And again, there may not be many or any at all. And then require customer service inspections at any connection for which the utility doesn't have a CSI certificate on file.
Yeah, customer service inspections, I know, was a big part of the base of our program. And like you said, it is a place that we didn't have a lot of records going in, right? And we've spoken to several municipalities since we've been with Hardin, where we've had the similar case, right? The CSI program's not there, and that's really the bedrock of your cross connection control program. It just gives you a lot of information that you would not otherwise have. So, is there any other one thing that a utility should be doing today? So maybe not these utilities that are starting from scratch, but is there any one thing that every utility should be doing today to make sure they're not missing assemblies that could pose a risk in their system?
For those utilities that have an existing program and they want to make sure that they aren't missing any particular connections or backflow prevention assemblies installed at a particular connection, I really think it does come down to your record maintenance program and knowing what you have and being able to keep up with it. is key.
Well, Joel, I really want to thank you for your time today, for being with us on the podcast. I know it was enlightening to me. I'm sure it was enlightening to the folks that are going to watch this. And really, I just appreciate your work through the years, helping folks with their cross connection control programs. I know it can be, from a guy who started from scratch, I know it can be overwhelming right at the top. So I really appreciate your work. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.